Imagine you're asleep in a felt tent on a cold steppe night, the kind of cold that makes your bones ache even in your dreams. You're 13, maybe 14, old enough to fetch water, too young to be anything but a child in your own head. Then the ground starts to shake. Hooves, the sound that, in the 13th century, might as well be a death sentence. Men on horseback tear across the dark like ghosts with torches, and before you're even fully awake, your world is gone. Your brother tries to fight and collapses with an arrow in his throat. Your mother screams once and then never again. And you, small, barefoot, shaking, are not killed. You're pulled from the wreckage of your life by men who do something worse. They spare you. Not because they're merciful, not because they're kind, but because in Genghis Khan's empire, a girl like you is more valuable alive than dead. Dead! You're a body. Alive. You're property. They drag you with others. Girls, boys, even grown women whose faces already look carved out of stone from everything they've seen. You're tied together like livestock, marched behind the riders, stumbling through ash where your village used to be. The air smells of burnt wool, blood, and something else you can't name. Every time you slow down, the leather whip snaps near your ear. You learn quickly. Don't cry too loudly. Don't ask questions. Don't look anyone in the eye for too long. You ask yourself the only question that makes sense. Why am I still alive? And in this empire, under this Khan, the answer is brutally simple. You're being taken as part of the spoils. Livestock, gold, weapons, and human beings. The men who burned your home are not just soldiers, they're harvesters. And tonight, they harvested you. Days later, when your feet are blistered and your tears have dried into a permanent salt sting on your cheeks, you reach a larger camp, a city of felt and smoke and roaring fires. Here, you learn the first unofficial law of the Mongol world. Everything belongs to someone bigger than you. The Khan owns the empire. His generals own cities. His soldiers own the lives they haven't snuffed out yet. And you? You belong to whomever your captors decide. You're inspected like an object. Hands grab your chin, turn your face left and right, checking your teeth as if you're a horse. They talk about you in a language you barely understand. Good hips, clear skin, no visible scars, still young. That's when you finally understand you're not a survivor, you're inventory. Then you hear a new word whispered around the camp, a word that drops like stone in your stomach. Concubine. You don't know what it means at first, but you recognize the way it's said. Half hunger, half boredom. Men pointing at girls, laughing. Women looking away with eyes that seem to age 10 years in a heartbeat. In Genghis Khan's empire, being a concubine means you are trapped in a role that you never chose and will never be allowed to leave. There's no ceremony, no marriage, no vows, just a decision made above your head. This girl belongs in this tent, to this man, for this purpose. One evening, a guard grabs your arm and says a name you don't recognize. A commander, a noble, someone important. You're shoved toward his tent. You don't know it yet, but you've just been assigned the job that will define and destroy the rest of your life. You step inside and the world shrinks. Outside, the camp roars with the noise of an army that believes it can take anything it wants. Inside, the air is thick with sweat, fermented mare's milk and power. Furs line the floor, weapons hang on posts. Everything screams wealth and violence. The man who owns this space looks at you like you're not a person, just another object added to his collection. A saddle, a bow, a young girl. His eyes don't ask, they decide. And in that moment, every story you've ever heard about the greatness of the Mongol Empire, about its brilliant tactics and unstoppable armies, melts into something far more personal and far more horrifying. Because the real cost of a world-conquering empire isn't just measured in burned cities and dead warriors. It's measured in nights exactly like this, where someone's life is quietly, permanently stolen behind the walls of a tent. History loves to talk about Genghis Khan in numbers, how many cities he razed, how many armies he crushed, how many millions died under his horse's hooves. But there's another statistic that rarely makes it into the heroic stories, the number of women and girls taken as concubines, scattered like shadows across the empire. We hear about his harem, his wives, his alliances through marriage, even the creepy genetic studies that brag that a huge percentage of men in Central Asia might descend from Genghis or his sons. What we don't talk about is what that actually means. It means an empire built not just on bloodshed, but on systematic, industrial-scale violation. A breeding machine disguised as destiny. A dynasty anchored by terrified, nameless girls who never got to say no. And the cruelty doesn't stop at the tent flap. Once you're taken as a concubine, your identity is rewritten. Your old name, your village, your family, those are burned along with your home. You're renamed, reclassified, repurposed. If you're attached to a high-ranking man, your womb becomes state property. Your body is a battlefield where politics, lineage, and ambition collide. If you bear a son, he might be valuable. If you bear a daughter, she might be fed into the same machine that consumed you. If you bear nothing, if you get sick, if you displease, you are disposable, sent away, traded, or simply left to fade into the background of an empire that never meant for you to be anything more than a tool. This is the part of Mongol history that rarely gets the cinematic treatment. We love the sweeping shots of cavalry charging across the steppe, the thunder of drums, the banners flapping in the wind. We don't see the other side of that camera angle. The girls hauled behind those armies, trying to walk with thighs bruised and spirits already broken, rehearsing their silence for the night ahead. We glorify the strategy, the genius, the empire building. We call Genghis Khan a self-made emperor, a visionary, a military genius. We almost never call him what his concubines would have, a man whose power included the unquestioned right to own your body. So tonight, we're going to rip the hero worship away. We're going to step inside those tents, behind the flattering legends, and talk about the empire as it looked from the ground up, from the eyes of the women who weren't queens, who didn't get their names written in official histories, who didn't marry for diplomacy but were simply taken because someone decided they could. This isn't about glorifying suffering or lingering on gore. It's about refusing to let an empire be remembered only for its victories while erasing the quiet, relentless horrors that fueled it. Welcome to the side of Genghis Khan's empire that the chronicles tried to minimize, that storytellers brush past, that apologists excuse as normal for the time. Tonight we're not following the conqueror, we're following the concubine, and the story you're about to hear is not about glory. It's about survival under a man whose shadow still stretches over history, and over the countless women whose names it swallowed. You wake up before the sun because the tent never really gets dark. There's always some ember glowing, some guard shifting outside, some distant horse snorting. But mostly you're awake because your body doesn't sleep the way it used to. You've learned to listen for footsteps, for the flap of the entrance lifting, for the angry sigh that means you didn't move fast enough. In Genghis Khan's empire, fear isn't a feeling you have once in a while. It's the air you breathe. As a concubine, your day is a list of silent rules. Don't speak first, don't show disgust, don't cry where he can see you, don't forget who owns you. You exist to be pleasing, and the price of failing at that is never openly discussed. It doesn't have to be. You've seen what happens to other girls who cause trouble. One day they're in the tent next to yours. The next day they're just not. Outside, the empire pretends everything is orderly, even generous. Officially, powerful men are supposed to treat their concubines well. They're supposed to feed you, clothe you, protect you from other predators because you already belong to them. You might even be given jewelry or silk, not because you're loved, but because decorated property makes its owner look wealthier. Some chronicle, written by a man who never looked a concubine in the eye, will later call this favour. He'll talk about gifts and honour and the Khan's kindness to his women. He won't write down the bruises. He won't mention the girls who begged to be killed rather than handed over. Because in the official story, concubines are footnotes, background characters in the great male drama of conquest. But inside the women's quarters, the reality is carved into faces and whispered in the gaps between duties. You learn very quickly that there is a hierarchy even among those who are already trapped. Wives with titles, favoured concubines with influence, new girls like you at the bottom, wide-eyed and easy to blame. Rivalries form because they have to. If one girl rises, another falls. If one girl bears a son, her status shifts. If one misstep could mean being discarded, then every other woman becomes both ally and threat. You're forced to navigate a social battlefield just as brutal as any the men fight on horseback, except your weapons are obedience, flattery, and the hope that tonight he chooses someone else. And above all of this, like a god you'll never meet, sits Genghis Khan himself, the man whose name is on every prayer, every oath, every terrified whisper. You might never see him, but his power shapes your every breath. He is the reason these armies ride. He is the reason cities burn. He is the reason you were taken. Chronicles say he had many wives and many more concubines. They list them like treasures, beauties from conquered lands, daughters of defeated kings, girls given as tribute so that their fathers might live. Each one is a line in a ledger of power. Imagine how that looks from the inside, being told you're an honor gift, handed over as proof that your people have submitted. Imagine standing in a line of other young women, all draped in your finest clothes, not because someone loves you, but because your appearance will determine how useful you are to the man who destroyed your world. This system doesn't end with Genghis. His sons and grandsons inherit it right alongside the empire. The great Khan dies, but the machinery he built keeps grinding. More campaigns, more captives, more concubines added to collections that already blur together. Your body becomes part of a bloodline project, a dynasty built like a pyramid with stolen lives as the base. History will later marvel at how far the Mongol genes spread. How many people alive today might carry a fragment of DNA from that ruling family? Some people even say it like it's impressive. But from your perspective, that statistic isn't a flex. It's a crime scene report written in bloodlines instead of ink. If you're lucky enough to bear a child, your life shifts, but not always for the better. If he's a son and he lives, he might be valued as a potential warrior, a tool, another piece in the Empire's endless game, but he's not yours in the way children should be. He's groomed, claimed, shaped. You're expected to be proud when he rides off to burn someone else's village, to repeat the same cycle that brought you here. If you have a daughter, the future is even more cruelly predictable. You see in her your own past. You watch her grow up in the shadow of men who will gaze at her body the way they once gazed at yours, and you know that unless something breaks this world apart, she will never be allowed to be just a girl. She will either be traded, married strategically, or quietly pressed into the same invisible slavery you know too well. Over time, the worst part isn't just what's done to you, it's the pressure to erase yourself to survive it. You learn to talk about your own suffering like it's just the way things are. You convince yourself you're fortunate compared to the women who were killed outright. You teach yourself that numbness is bravery. And when songs are sung in the camp about Genghis and his sons, about their victories and their glory, you keep your face blank. Because what else can you do? Stand up in the middle of the Khan's feast and say, "Actually, I'm not honored to be here. I was stolen." In this world, truth is a luxury you can't afford. Silence is survival. Centuries later, historians will argue about Genghis Khan. Was he a monster shaped by a brutal time, or a genius who built a global empire? Was he more ruthless than other rulers, or just more successful? They'll count trade routes and legal reforms, discuss religious tolerance, even praise some aspects of Mongol administration. They'll debate his legacy like it's a puzzle to solve, but very few will frame the question the way the concubines would have. They wouldn't ask, was he a good ruler? They'd ask, what does it mean that one man's power included the right to erase you? That's the part of dark history we have to sit with. It's not just about shock value or horror for horror's sake. It's about refusing to let empires float above human suffering like they existed in some clean, strategic, bloodless vacuum. For every great man at the center of a story, there's an entire crowd of invisible people crushed beneath his legend. In Genghis Khan's empire, concubines were some of the most invisible of all. Their names are lost, their voices are gone, but their pain is baked into the foundations of that history, whether the textbooks admit it or not. So when you hear someone praise the Khan as a self-made legend, or talk about how cool it is that he reshaped the world, remember this. Empires are not built in map colours and timelines. They are built in stolen lives, stolen bodies, stolen choices. Behind every banner flapping in the steppe wind, there was a girl in a tent staring at the ceiling, wondering if anyone in the future would ever know she existed. Tonight, you do, and once you've seen her, the story of Genghis Khan, the conqueror, the genius, the empire builder, can never look the same again.